We now have a very quick session with three very young people who are using technology in different and creative ways, expressing themselves through the medium, expressing themselves in ways that perhaps would not have been possible without the medium. So they're three very young entrepreneurs in their own ways: Meenakshi, Reddy, Shazeb, Shaikh, and Sonal Kapoor. Do welcome them on stage. You clearly have a lot of young friends in the audience. Let me start with you, Sonal. You know, I was reading with interest that you were holding a 9-to-5 job, and then much like what Bob was describing, but possibly in a smaller scale, you came in touch with some realities of India, and you gave up the 9-to-5 job, and now you're running a school, mostly for girl children or street children. And so tell us a little about it, you know.
Okay, so I was just another 23.
Will you just put your mic closer to you?
Okay. I was just like another 23-year-old girl, right out of MBA, trying to figure out a world for myself into advertising. And apparently the world had crashed. Lehman Brothers had collapsed in 2008. So everything else for the parents of an MBA daughter had crashed. So I was still trying to figure out what to do, and I landed up in advertising. And as a part of shooting of one of my corporate films for one of the commercials for Coca-Cola, we just landed up in a slum where I met a woman who had 6 kids, and she was pregnant with the 7th one. And she was sending her 8-year-old daughter to a brothel so that every 4 days, 3 days, she's going to get a 500 rupee note. And that's how the entire family would be fed. The whole point is, you know, when this, you generally feel such stuff happens on Discovery or such stuff happens on the Times of India newspaper ka front page, but ye reality thi, you know, and that's when within 25 minutes, half an hour, I decided I'm going to quit my job. Of course, it took 4 months to actually quit the job, but I started with a little creative arts center for all the girls that we started rescuing from trafficking and child labor points and this and that, to now to a point where we run a school.
So how do you use, how do you sustain it? How do you sustain it? Do you have others who've joined you?
Oh yes, we have, it's been about 2.5 years now, and it's become a countrywide movement. It's called Protsahan. It's crazy how people have reacted to it. Initially, I didn't even have the money to run a website, but all it started out with was just a Facebook page and just 12 people, the closest friends I had, and I just tagged them along, and to a point where it's 6,000 plus people. Crazy response. It's just not that there are people on the thing, but to a point where the World Bank came to recognize us, United Nations came to recognize us as a youth organization that's actually doing something and not just thinking, but and to a point where all the youngsters came across. And we now, we have rescued about 250, 300 odd kids from points 6 years old to 12, 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 years old, from points where you and I could not even have had, thought of. So yeah, it's crazy we've used Facebook, we've used Twitter, not just to update statuses that I'm in the loo, I'm in the washroom, but to update statuses saying that we have rescued a life, and this is how you're supposed to be a part of it. And it's been crazy, the responses have been crazy.
So typically when you rescue them, what happens? Do you have a school? How do you repatriate them?
Okay.
What is the module that you're using?
So initially when we started, I was somebody who had experience. I mean, I'm a microbiologist otherwise. I don't know why really, but yeah. And so I had no experience how to rescue a kid or have a legal support or a police support. In fact, when I reached out to the police guys, that was also through Facebook. An annoyed police guy, he saw us on Facebook, and I'm like, he was like, I want to come and be a part of the mission. And that's how we started rescuing kids. So Facebook, or technology as you want to call it, or a hashtag on Twitter has led to support that I just can't even imagine without, and I think once we rescue a kid, we run the kid through a 10-month, 12-month bridge course where we just work through elements of art, photography, cinema, design, and stories, as we call the 5 elements at Protsahan. We don't use a lot of Kakaga and 1, 2, 3 because for a kid who's rescued from a red light area or a brothel, Kirkegaard will not make sense. So we start painting the slums, we start painting the walls, we start doing crazy things, start talking about butterflies, to a point where the kids who didn't speak, they were kids who, 7-year-old kid I remember, Lakshmi, who had helped her mom deliver a baby brother. So she had cut the umbilical cord, and the next day when we saw her, she was scared to death, to a point where she's a happy girl and who jumps, and you just can't stop her from jumping. So of course we use elements which are not really the absolute education that you want to call it in terms of rote education, but something which is creative and fun, and get them back to, and then we get them to a government school.
Meenakshi, let me come to you. You know, you've published 2 books which are confessional, sexual, talking about drugs, urban life, young women searching for themselves. But you're better known really as the blogger, somebody who's been documenting her personal diaries on the net. Tell me, how important is that medium? Would you have done this if the medium was not there?
I think I really lucked into it. I saw a gap sometime when I was a young, bored journalist, and I know people here are journalists, but at one point you have to make the TV listings page, and you have to wait for everyone to finish with their days so that you can put the TV listings on, and I had nothing to do. And I've been reading a lot about this new weblog phenomenon that was everywhere, so I decided to start my own. And I also didn't see anything coming from India. I mean, I saw stuff abroad, and I saw stuff like that. And I want to write about people like me who so far had been underrepresented in literature or online, the global Indian person.
So what kind of responses do you get? The net can be quite a vituperative place. It's emancipating, but it's also very ugly. So when you've written off your diaries, your inner thoughts, your sexual escapades, what is the kind of response you get, and how do you deal with that?
Well, on the very personal, I do get a lot of people saying, please don't write about me. But broadly, I think I get a lot of emails from people saying, thank you for doing this. This is my story. And then over the years, I've been doing this for close to 9 years now. Over the years, I've been getting people writing to me for advice and saying, what should I do about this situation? Or if I blog about a breakup, they'll say, I'm in this stage of my breakup. How did you get over the guy so fast? It's, yeah.
So is that a comfortable space to suddenly become a savant just because you can be heard over the net?
I really never thought of myself as representing anyone. I thought it was just going to be a little micro world where I write about myself and no one will care except maybe 5 people. And it's nice, but it's also really scary. I mean, to be here and be talking about my generation, I'm like, what? Who gave me the qualifications for that?
And how's your family, your parents? I don't know if you saw Sherry Turkle's session, but she's been talking about how the internet medium is a whole new language in society that everyone's grappling with. It's a new medium. It's something that one hasn't really come to terms with. So the fact that you're doing something which the medium has enabled you to do, does your family understand it? Does your first circle of elderly people feel uncomfortable with it?
For a long time, my parents refused to even acknowledge that I had a blog. And then people started coming up to them parties and saying, oh, your daughter's blog. And they were like, okay, maybe you should visit it. And they asked me, should we visit it? They treat it like a personal diary that I keep under the mattress or something. They'd say, should we visit your blog? And I'd be like, maybe you don't want to read it right now. Maybe after I'm married, children, something. But they're very respectful of my space, and they don't quite get it.
They don't quite get it?
No, but they're quite pleased for me, nevertheless.
Your mother's a literary editor of a magazine. Does she rate your book?
No longer, actually. But,
no longer, okay. She has been. Does she rate your books as literature?
We've had long discussions about why I'm not featured anywhere in her magazine, but I think nepotism aside, they've both been really supportive. It's been really nice, yeah.
Just one last question. Do you find that you write differently when you're doing a book and it's in print, and are you different when you do it on the internet?
I'm a lot more self-indulgent on the internet. Anyone who follows me on Twitter will know that my profile is all about my cat and hangovers and drinks and things like that. I'm so the opposite of what I try to make my novel writing like. I want that to be more cut and more like an art, and writing online is just, it's just something I do.
So why do young, the kind of class of society that you come from, it's not that people are really that restricted. So why do you feel that young people feel so liberated being able to speak of all this on the net?
Well, 10 years ago, actually, it was a lot more restricted than it is right now. because people were still doing it, but no one was talking about it. There was a lot of hypocrisy, especially in the circles that I moved in and the circles that I knew of. And I feel that people wanted to know more about, people wanted to know that they had access to that kind of world. I mean, people moving from small towns to big cities as well. I get a lot of emails from people like that.
Do you get people writing in from small towns?
Yeah, saying
And
that.
so do you feel you've opened up a new space for others?
I hope so. I see a lot more people writing about their personal lives online, while I caution everyone to be careful. I hope that a lot more people will start being diarious in a way.
Now, what value do you think that has?
I think in 20 years it probably have a lot more value than it has right now.
Okay. Shazeb, do tell us about your wall project. You know, the common thread with both of them is about using a medium. You're using a different surface altogether, which is a wall. Tell our audience how you started to do the wall project.
Ours was and is a very simple project. It started with one wall back in 2007 when it was just about looking around and seeing all these dull walls and like what can you do so that when people come out it just probably feels a little bit better. And after the first wall, which was painted by maybe about 10, 12 friends, it just kind of exploded through this, this area in Bandra in Bombay called Chapel Road. And so at the beginning, the word went around that if you want to get your wall painted for free, you just paint it white and we'll come and paint it for you. And suddenly we saw, you know, a bunch of white walls just come up. And slowly it seeped through different parts of Bombay city. We painted about 7.8 kilometers on at a stretch with maybe over 2,000 people over 3 sessions. And yeah, it continues. It's gone to 7 cities now. Yeah.
So what kind of images do you, or what kind of images have come up on these walls?
All kinds of images have come because we don't just invite artists. It could be people from, you know, just citizens can come and paint, and there is no theme. In fact, that's what we try to do. We don't try to keep a theme. It's always that just don't put anything political, social, or religious. But even if you want to talk about some kind of a message, just try and do it with design and with colors in the most simple manner possible, or in something complicated. But
why would you have those parameters? You know, we just saw in the session before this the wonderful wall graffiti that came up in the Egyptian revolution. You know, why would you say that there should be nothing political, social, or religious in the messaging?
Because it just gets
What
very
does that
difficult.
leave you with?
I'm sorry?
What does that leave the images with?
I'll tell you why we try and avoid that. It's just that when you give something like a wall that is in public view to anybody, it's very difficult to moderate when people just start coming and expressing something that's very, very personal. And we're not saying that don't express something that you want to. It's just that we're trying to just put that one little parameter just so that it becomes a little bit easier for us to continue with the project, because it's more about beautifying the city. It's not so much about you know, bringing your concerns out there. I mean, that's at least where we started, and that's what we wanted to do.
So typically, what kind of images, and how's the neighborhood responded to that?
The neighborhoods have been different because we've now painted in 7 cities, but all kinds of images have come up. We've seen where artists, and a very important part about our project is that everything is permissible. We go and get permissions, and then we go and paint. So we've seen where the residents of the house have told us that you know, somebody's sick and they would love to have something outside there because that would make them feel better. So we've had faces of the people who are living in the houses painted right outside their houses. We've had the street pet that's been painted in the streets. We've had a lot of contextual paintings that have been done by Indian artists and by other international artists who've also come and painted with us now.
You know, we have to wrap this up, but can I leave you with the thought, which is
Sure.
that while you might determine that people will not put up excessive hate or bigotry on the walls, why not allow some politics and social and religious images? You know, we're a democracy. If you can have those voices on the internet, why not in the physical world, especially when you're a young generation, you know?
Sure.
Thank you so much for listening. It's wonderful that you are using the medium to create new worlds. Thank you.